everyone, welcome to the first Young Leaders podcast. I'm Charlie Morgan, I'm here with Dan and Finn, if you want to say hello.
Hi, I'm Finn Gordon-McCusker and I'm involved in youth governance in the city.
Hi everyone, my name's Dan Boone and I'm also part of the youth governance team, using our voices for young people.
We are all part of the youth governance group here at YMCA North Staff. So just to give you a bit of an idea of who we are, as the youth governance group we are here to represent young people and give young people a voice, both in Stoke-on-Trent and beyond. Today our first ep is based on young people and voting. So if I just jump straight in with some stats that I've got here, guys. So some data taken from the 2019 general election saw that under half of young people that were eligible to vote in the UK voted at 47%. So this was a decrease of 7% since 2017. What are his thoughts on why the numbers dropped, really, of people that are eligible to vote, young people?
I think in 2019 people just didn't feel like the vote was going to count. People felt that the environment was so toxic and up in the air and kind of turbulent that nothing they did mattered because they weren't going to get to make the decision. And it's particularly among young people, since we got the right to vote at 18 in 1972, we've always been underrepresented at the ballot box, and so I just think people didn't feel like it was going to count.
Yeah, I agree with Finn. When you grow up, you always think of what you want to do, your future, and voting is the last thing on your mind. So when I was young, leaving school was always, what am I going to do? What job am I going to do? Once I found the job I wanted to do, the opportunities weren't allowed in Stoke-on-Trent. So it was always looking to Birmingham, Manchester, and I always thought, so if I'm going to move to one of the bigger cities, what's the point in voting in Stoke-on-Trent, because I'm not going to make a difference and the vote's not going to make a difference anyway.
So that was sort of more to do with location, which affected your engagement. I mean, I will say that me personally, especially when I was younger, I wasn't very engaged with politics, and my sort of angle on that was always that I felt like the language was quite complex, so I always felt a little that I didn't properly understand, so I was voting on something I was quite misinformed on. So my sort of thought process was, I wish that they'd just simplify it. Yeah. Maybe in the campaigns that are in your face and that are on the TV a lot, don't really address factors that impact young people as much. And then obviously I'm a little bit older now, I've got a mortgage now and things like that. I'm a bit more affected by the things that they talk about, and maybe that's why I've got a bit more of an interest now. I mean, what do you guys think to that?
I totally agree, and I think that it's a shame that the issues that young people face just aren't properly addressed in campaigns. Yeah. I think one of the reasons for that is that a lot of politicians from all sides realise that young people tend not to vote. So there's no point talking to people that don't vote. You might as well talk to the people that do, which I think is why we hear so much about pensions and retirement, things like that. But I agree, and I think that when you get a leaflet through the door and you ask to vote for someone, most of the time you ask to vote for someone, if you're young, who looks nothing like you. Normally it's a middle-aged man in a suit, quite frankly, and people just don't identify with that, and it doesn't resonate with them, I think.
When you're young, you don't really know anything about politics. All the things they're talking about don't affect you, but as we grow older and we get more mature, day-to-day life affects us. So when we're buying a house, when we're saving up for a car, when we're trying to get on the property ladder, these things affect us more, so we want to use our voice to allow the people in the community to hear what as young people want to change, and the politicians, so they can listen to us as young people.
Yeah, so what do we think could be done to get young people more engaged? So touching on that, maybe more simplistic language, things that break it down, in a simpler form so that people can actually follow it. Touching on what you guys have said, what do you think?
I think there's got to be a lot more sort of education around politics and the impact of politics. I was probably 18 by the time I realised what a council did and what a difference it made to our everyday lives. That was only because of my involvement in it. I think that at school we're not really taught about the difference that a vote makes in a local election or even a general election. I think we've got to do a lot more around educating people from a young age about the difference that the vote makes and the importance of casting the vote.
Education in school, our voice is such strong voice. When you're young, you think like your voice is not getting heard, but the voice is very strong. So us as youth ambassadors, we can use our voice to make change. And if you're educated at a young age that your voice matters, you can have your own opinions and your own beliefs and use your voice to allow that voice to be heard by other people.
Yeah, because from my perspective, I don't know about you two, I don't think we were ever spoken to about voting at school.
No.
Were you, Finn?
I think there was a couple of times during the 2015 and 2017 general elections it was kind of touched on, but it was only a 15-minute sort of chat at the beginning of the day.
Maybe I just can't remember.
Yeah, when I was at school, I think we went to the same school, so it might have been the same discussion. But yeah, when you're young, it was more what your friends were voting for, and you didn't really use your own belief. I think at a young age, you don't really know what the world's about. You're just learning about yourself. And as you get older, you learn about the parties and what you believe in and what you want to see change. So I think, like you said, the education system, it needs to be changed a lot better because, and if we want young people to vote, I think we need to be educated on it a lot more.
Yeah. So Finn, with you saying that it was probably only like a 15-minute segment, maybe just putting more emphasis on how it works and the process, because I know the voting age is obviously 18, but maybe even if they're doing it in colleges, I mean, it definitely wasn't touched on in college. Maybe there was a bit of something at school. It definitely wasn't touched on in college for me. We didn't have visitors or anything. So could that be something?
Yeah, I think it just needs to be spoken about more because obviously everyone has their own opinions. And I think people are scared to talk to people about their beliefs and who they want to vote for. And I think it needs to be normalised. Just open your voice and learn, educate yourself on parties in your own local area. If you have a belief and you want to see something get changed in your own area, your voice could be that person that makes that change.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good example for the language maybe is I've noticed on Instagram I've come across a page that's quite, it's simple and it simplifies and it literally puts pictures on of set points from the day. So if people can look for resources like that maybe do break it down a little bit for them and help them to understand. I've also heard of quizzes that you can do online that lines up different parties with your values and stuff like that. So maybe if people haven't got an understanding at all, that's something that they could look into, and maybe we'd get more people voting if they understood it a bit better.
What you say about language matters. If you're talking a completely different language to what you're used to, then you're just not going to feel inclined at all to participate. But on what you were saying about people coming into schools and colleges, I was quite fortunate actually, because at the time that I was at sixth form, we had MPs, our 3 MPs in Stoke, who were from a mixture of different political parties, and we got to hear from all of them. And I think that was quite important in making us understand how we felt about politics and how we felt about what was going on. But then again, they were only talking to the politics students, so we were probably already sort of a little bit more involved, and that's a massive problem, because that was 30 out of nearly 1,000 people. And
with their interest being there, I suppose they came to speak to you because you had an interest in politics. If you're not on a course in politics and they're not addressing things that do directly impact you, going back to that point that was made earlier, I suppose that's where the gap is. At that point in mind then, thinking about addressing factors that actually do impact young people, what issues do you think in this city young people would want to be addressed?
I think that within the city, a lot of the conversation that young people have around politics and government is the lack of opportunities for people in the city. There's a lot of people feel that there simply aren't the jobs, as you touched on earlier. If you have a certain career in mind, often the opportunities are limited and the jobs out there aren't as wide-ranging as people would like them to be. So they feel the need to move to other cities and take their talents and abilities elsewhere. Another one that comes up a lot is transport and public transport, and being able to get from A to B in an affordable and efficient way when bus routes across the country are sort of, because of things that have happened, like the pandemic, like other changes have been reduced. People find it more difficult than ever to get around. And then it's about things to do. A lot of people talk about the fact that there's nothing to do, or they feel that there's nothing to do in Stoke. We've got wonderful parks and outdoor areas and things like that, but a lot of the time for leisure and culture, we've got a much more limited array than other cities, I'd say. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like you said, the opportunities, you go down Hanley and the opportunities for jobs, there's nothing there. It's horrible to walk through. But as young people, we know this, and if we use our voice to speak about what we want to see changed, so we want to see more job opportunities, we want to see, like you said, more things going on in your local area. We want to see changes. We want to have better transportation to go see these things. So us as young people, we know these things that we want to see changed. So if we use our voice, we will, and we can get these things that we want. We just need to vote and use your own voice to make change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that comes up quite a lot among young people is the provision of mental health services in the city. And it's kind of a two-tier approach where the council has some input in the preventative stuff, and then the rest of the higher end of the need spectrum, as it were, on mental health goes to the NHS. But the services aren't there, and a lot of people are falling through the cracks, slipping through the cracks, and really struggling with a difficult time. And that's something that I think, because young people don't vote in big numbers, people are minded to ignore that, for something else, talk about something else that people who vote are interested in, and leave young people's mental health behind. And I think that's something that we need to address, and that young people would really like to see addressed.
Yeah, I do think that's a big one as well, because the younger generation are the most open when it comes to mental health, aren't they? And I think it's always brought up, in the youth gov groups. Whenever we talk about campaigns we're interested in, it's always mental health is one of the main ones that come up. For me personally, I also think as well, affordable housing is a massive one. Obviously, the job I'm in, I kind of see firsthand that you get a lot of people that might start off in supported accommodation where they're not working. They secure a job and they can't afford supported accommodation, but then private tenancies are through the roof, especially since COVID. And I think the affordable accommodation, the access just isn't there, and we definitely need more.
100%. And I think in Stoke we're almost lucky in a sense that house prices are comparatively low, but it's still that getting onto the housing ladder is such a difficulty. I was talking to someone yesterday who was in her 80s, and she told me that when they bought their house, it was £5,000 for this nice detached house. So I just couldn't believe it. It's crazy, isn't it, really? But it's actually providing the affordable accommodation for people, good quality accommodation, and building decent houses again that people can afford to live in, local people can afford to live in. Yeah,
because it's allowing young people to achieve independence, isn't it? If they go into supported accommodation like here at the YMCA, and then there isn't that access there for move on, again you end up stuck. So I do think that's quite an important one. There has been a recent change in election law, meaning that people can only vote if they present photo ID. So what impact do you think that this could have on young people?
I think it's going to mean that fewer young people vote, and we've already got a problem with young people voting, but statistically young people are less likely to have the ID that's required, whether that's because of affordability in terms of being able to afford a driving licence and the lessons and a car or a passport. The structure of the ID requirements means that, for example, an over 60s Oyster card is valid ID to go and vote, but an over 18s Oyster card with the same information isn't valid ID. So there's a lot less ID that young people are likely to have that means that they'll be able to vote. So I do think it's going to decrease the number of young people voting in the elections.
Yeah, as sad as it is, I've got to agree with Finn. A lot of young people don't have the ID and the passport because generally they can't afford it, or they've never really had one.
We've seen an article on Stoke-on-Trent Live that says that around about 58,122, which is 22% of people eligible to vote, in Stoke-on-Trent do not have a passport. Obviously, I don't know if you know, but there's an upcoming passport strike that's going to last around about 5 weeks. So it's safe to assume that some people are not going to be able to access a passport, which is one of the main forms of ID that will be used to vote. So again, it's restricting the amount of people that are going to be able to.
To get around the ID requirement, if you apply for a postal vote, you don't need to have any form of ID for that. You apply for the postal vote to the council, and they'll send you your ballot paper in the post. You return it in the post. You can also take it to the polling station on the day, but you need ID to do that. Also, because I know what you said about passports is absolutely right, and that's going to be a big problem for people who are trying to access identification, but you can get a free voter authority certificate which you apply for online. So if you search for voter ID, it'll come up. You go on the Gov UK website and you can apply for a voter authentication or voter authority certificate and get free photo ID that way.
Okay, so that's helpful to know then, that even though there is that law in place that could potentially restrict it, there are other alternative routes that maybe people can take, young people especially. In your opinions, what do you think we could do to get more young people to vote and encourage young people to engage more?
Here at YMCA, we're doing a youth hostings event where anyone in the community can come along and share their opinions to politicians and hear the responses. And if you're not, like myself, when I was young, I wasn't really educated on all the politics. You can just come along, hear other people's opinions.
So touching on some of the stuff that we spoke about earlier, obviously I've mentioned maybe having a look at resources that do simplify different policies and things, so hopefully that we can build more of an understanding. And what do we think that the benefits of voting are for young people? What benefits do we think can come from young people voting?
Fundamentally, I think that if young people vote, then their opinions are going to be listened to by the decision makers, and I think life will improve for young people. It might not seem like something which is immediate and has an immediate effect there and then, but I think by continuing to turn out and go to the polls and vote in the elections, the people that make the decisions will have no choice but to listen to us, because they want our votes, and they'll have to adapt their policies to win our votes.
It's like, as our job as youth ambassadors, one of the campaigns that we worked on not long ago was the cost of living campaign, and we reached out to the Prime Minister and we successfully made a change. When you see that change happening, you are more likely to want to vote on your own opinion as young people in Stoke-on-Trent.
So I think it's safe to say that the more young people that vote, the more the issues that affect young people will be addressed and will potentially be improved. So it's been great to get together and discuss this topic ahead of the election in May. Hopefully this can give a bit of an insight of some of the issues that young people face, both in the local area and beyond, and can give a bit of an insight into the benefits of voting for young people. Big thank you to Dan and Finn for joining us today. If you want to know more about the YouthGov group or about the YMCA North staff, you can go to our website at ymcans.org.uk. Our Facebook is YMCA North Staffordshire, or you could follow us on Twitter and Insta at YMCANS. And to register to vote as a young person, you can visit the Gov website at gov.uk/register-to-vote. Thank you very much.